بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. My brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I welcome you all inshallah to this. Today is the 8th session, I think. Yes. Today is the 8th session in this series of classes. And I would like to begin by showing my appreciation and gratitude for you taking the time to be here. And I know that it's not an easy thing given how busy your schedules are and how hectic university schedule can be. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward you and to write every step, inshallah, that you took to this place in your scale of good deeds. Just to give you a quick recap, especially for those of you who weren't with us the previous academic year, we began this series of classes in the previous semester, second semester of the previous year, and it has a structure. If you just joined us just now, you might find it difficult to catch where we are exactly and why we are talking about this right in the middle. Number one, I would like to encourage you to go through the previous classes. Okay? But just to help you understand where we are at the moment, I will quickly give you like a bird's eye view as to where we are exactly in terms of the Fiqh of Taharah. At the very beginning, we decided that, or we studied that the fuqaha, the scholars of Fiqh, when they speak about Fiqh, they will split Fiqh into two areas. One area is the area which they call the mu'amalat, which means dealings and transactions that takes place between people. So they would list all the fiqh issues related to that aspect in one section of the fiqh, which is half of it. The other half, they would call it fiqh al-ibadat. Al-ibadat, basically these are the acts of worship that is between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And obviously comparing the two together, which one would you think that they will begin with? Fiqh, the fiqh of dealings and transactions, al-mu'amalat, or the fiqh of acts of worship? Fiqh of ibadat, because this is the purpose for which we are created. And when it comes to the fiqh of ibadat, they decided that the one ibadah that is the number one important for a Muslim is his salat. The Prophet ﷺ said, as-salatu hamudud deen. The post that holds the whole deen together is salat. Right? And if salat, the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, if on the day of judgment, if one salat comes in good form and sound, then all his other ibadat will be in good form and in sound shape. And if his salat is not good, then that will impact on everything else. So it makes sense to begin with the chapter of salat. However, because the chapter of salat or salat is not accepted unless one has wudu, therefore the chapter of tahara, the chapter of purity, will be the first chapter they will have to discuss. Right? And that's why we chose to discuss the chapter of tahara. And inshallah, with Allah's grace and mercy, inshallah, we hope that at some point we will continue on the chapter of salat. When we began in the first session, we spoke about a small introduction concerning the importance of seeking Islamic knowledge, and we spoke also about the categories of tahara, like I just said now, and also we spoke about the categories of water, the types of water in the first lesson. And then we also followed that, still in the first lesson, we spoke about the vessels, the fiqh of vessels. The vessels that are the containers in which you will have to put your water. Right? That all took place in the first session. We spoke about fiqh, we spoke about tahara, categories of water, and the fiqh of vessels in the first class. In the second class, we spoke about the etiquettes of relieving oneself, adab qada al-haja. That was the second thing, because as you would imagine, if you have the water and you are in preparation to go to the salat, to prepare for wudu, the first thing you will do is you make sure that you have water and you have the right vessel or container for it, and then after that one might need to relieve oneself. So that one will be the section that deserves the most attention. After that, we spoke about sunan al-fitra. Sunan al-fitra, meaning these kind of habitual acts of cleanliness that are related to Taharah, like clipping the nails, trimming the mustache, leaving the beard, cutting or shaving the pubic hair, the underarm hair, this sort of things we discussed it in class number 3. Class number 4, we spoke about the siwak being one of the most important sunnah of the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and it is closely tied to the Taharah and the preparation for Salat. That was on class number 4. Class number 5, we started to speak about wudu. Class number 5, we started to speak about wudu, and we began to speak about the shurut of wudu. Shurut of wudu, these are the conditions that are required to be fulfilled before one begins the wudu. Right? And I recommend you to go back to that class. It has a lot of knowledge, something that you will benefit from, not only in the area of Taharah, but in other areas of life as well. On number 6, we spoke about the pillars of wudu. The pillars of wudu. Number 7, which was the class, the previous class number 7, we spoke about sifatul wudu, the description of wudu from A to Z. And after we have concluded the session, you must have noticed that we took another session whereby I did a practical implementation of wudu, and it is recorded on video, and it is on the ISOC's Facebook page. So if you click on that page, inshallah, you'll see also practical implementation of it. Now, on today's session, what makes sense to speak about after having spoken about wudu? Can anybody guess? Nawaqid al-wudu, the nullifiers of wudu, that makes sense as well. But before we get into that, something else that also is needed to be spoken about. Yes, sister? Waswas. This is a small mas'ala, we will have to address it inshallah, but that's not the chapter.
By the wudu and this.
Yeah, so after you finish your wudu, now you are in a state of wudu. Something is missing related to wudu, related to the last part of the wudu. The last part of wudu is relation to the feet. So something related to the feet, anybody? Yeah, wiping over the socks. Wiping over the socks. It makes sense because wiping over the socks can be part of your wudu. So this is the chapter that we will be speaking about here, inshallah. So we'll begin by this chapter. This chapter is called Bab al-Mashu ala al-Khuffayn, the chapter of wiping over the socks. And I'll give more details about this, inshallah. So as first point in introducing this idea, one has to remember always, in all aspects of life, in all aspects of fiqh, and in particular in the area of wudu and tahara, that our deen is a deen of ease. What this means is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala legislated the deen for us in an easy way, something that is easily implemented. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not want to put us through hardships. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرِ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرِ. What Allah wants for you is ease, not hardship and difficulty. And what this means, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves for us to be in a state of ease. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want you to worship Him while being put into difficulties and hardship. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to be comfortable and choosing to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that state. And part of that is the fact that one do not have to remove their socks in order to take wudu. In a lot of the cases, people usually wear socks or khuf, which means a socks made of leather. Many people would wear this, especially in cold countries, and sometimes just for convenience, people would wear socks. You can imagine if you are required 5 daily prayers to keep on removing the socks and wash the feet at every prayer, you would imagine this will put you off from praying. Do you agree? You know, I have spoken to many non-Muslims who are totally convinced about Islam, and the number one thing that stops them from actually becoming Muslims is this thought that they have to leave life and cut themselves to perform an act of worship called salat 5 times per day. You know, it's something that really daunts into them, and it makes it difficult for them to embrace Islam. So they keep on saying this, I'm convinced that Islam is the true religion, but I'm not ready for it yet. This 5 daily prayers, 5 daily wudu, you know, it can be a little bit tiresome, it can be difficult. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made sure that He makes it easy for us, as easy as possible. So what is al-masih? The first issue that we will have to discuss here is the word masih, which means wiping. And one important point here is to notice that masih is different from ghasl, which means washing, with one simple idea. Because with masih and ghasl, wiping and washing, in both cases, you would wet the body part that you are involved in. Right? So when you do masih, basically you are going to wet your hand and then wipe over the body that you're trying to wipe on, right? If you are doing ghusl, again, you will get an amount of water and then wash the body part. In both cases, your body will be wet, right? The difference between the two is that there will be no running of the water on your skin in the case of masih. That's the difference, right? The difference between masih and ghusl or ghasl is that in the case of ghasl, water has to run on your skin, right? There's what they call sayalan, you know, sayalanul ma. So that is what ghusl is. Masih, on the other hand, is wiping over it without necessarily introducing any form of liquid running on your skin. That is what masih is. The Prophet ﷺ used the word masih in the context. The hadith is not very authentic, but it is good as an example to explain the word masih. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man masaha على رأس يتيم كان له بكل شعرة حسنة." In this hadith, which is questionable in terms of its authenticity, it was said that the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever wipes over the head of an orphan, he will have a hasana, a reward for every string of hair on his head. So he used the word masih to show you that what it involved in the masih, the act of wiping over something, basically. Al-khuf, al-masih al-khuf. Originally, the word khuf is used for socks that are made of leather. Socks that are made of leather. And the reason why it's called khuf, some ulama, they say, is because it's derived from khafa, because it conceals the foot. When you wear the socks, the foot is invisible, is unseen. Right? So this is called khafa. And because of that, al-khuf is called khuf, coming from that word. Other ulama, they say rather, al-khuf is derived from al-khafif, something that is light, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lightened the ruling for us. He made the ruling easy for us, in the sense of, instead of having to go through the difficulty of washing, Allah made it lighter by allowing us to wipe. So they call it khuf because of that. The purpose for which socks or khuf, leather socks are used in the past, usually it is to warm the feet, and usually it's used in the winter. There's a hadith in Sahih Sunan Abi Dawood, narrated by Thawban radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he sent an expedition in one of the battlefield, and while they were there, they were cold. They got extremely cold, and some of them fall sick, and they came back to the Prophet ﷺ with complaints. So they said, "Ya Rasulullah, الناس تشكي." People start to complain about the cold weather. So the Prophet ﷺ, or Thawban, said, فَأَمَرَهُمْ أَنْ يَمْسَحُوا عَلَى الْعَصَائِبِ وَالتَّسَاخِينِ. So the Prophet ﷺ, he commanded them to wipe over the turbans, the imama, and on the tasakhin. Tasakhin means the khuf, the leather socks. And he called it tasakhin, which means those clothes that are used for taskhin, which means warming up. So you can see that the khuf is primarily used for this purpose. And you would imagine in the time of the Sahaba radwanullahi alayhim, there was a great need for this purpose. They used to go in jihad and battlefields, and in the winter in the Arabian Peninsula can be really cold. Also when they had to go in Azerbaijan and Persia and these cold countries, the temperature sometimes can be extremely cold. When people go through cold countries, or when you do visit icy or snowy countries, sometimes the temperature can drop below 20, 30 degrees Celsius. And in this sort of cases, people would usually be warned, you know, that you should not expose your body parts to to the open air, because they can freeze and you can lose senses. And people sometimes they can have an ear dropping due to extreme cold weather. An ear can just drop and you will not even feel it. You will not know that the ear has gone because of the extreme cold of the weather. Likewise with the fingers, the feet. So this idea of keeping the feet closed and warm is something that was quite a necessity in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. It's also a necessity for people in our present time. So the purpose for which this al-Masah al-Khuffayn is legislated is primarily to introduce ease and to bring a concession in people's lives. At-Taysir, as a concession for people. Whenever they need it, they use it. Now, the evidence to this is found in the Quran, in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and also there is an ijma'. Ijma' means there's a consensus amongst the scholars of Islam that this is something legislated and this is something permissible. To begin with, from the Quran, Surah Al-Ma'idah, the ayah which we called the verse of wudu, ayatul wudu. And this is verse 6 from chapter 5, Surah Al-Ma'idah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in this ayah, O you who believe, when you intend to stand in prayers, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu idha qumtum ila as-salat. And then he says, فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ. If you remember, when we discussed this ayah previously, I said there are two qira'ah for this, but we left the qira'ah for this class. There are two qira'ah. For those of you who learn how to read Arabic, there's a fatha and there is a kasra on top of a word which is called arjulakum. So arjul, which means feet, can be read arjulakum or arjulikum. Arjulakum or arjulikum. Two qira'at, two ways of reciting the same verse. In one qira'ah with the fatha, in another qira'ah with the kasra. In the qira'ah that came with the kasra, it means that the feet should be wiped, just like the head. In the qira'ah that comes with the fatha, it means the feet has to be washed, like the face and the arm. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when you intend to stand in prayers, wash your faces and your arms up to the elbow. And then he says, وَامْسَحُوا, and wipe with your وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ, and wipe your heads. Now after that he said, وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ, and with your feet. Now the feet, is it going to be wiped or is it going to be washed?
It's in the Qur'an.
So there are two qira'ah. If we say وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ, it means to be washed, because it will be attributed to the ghasl, to the washing part. If it's وَأَرْجُلِكُمْ, then it will be attributed to the head, which is supposed to be wiped, so you would be wiping both of them. So now we understand from this, because of the two qira'ah, that the feet can be either washed or wiped. Right? When do we wash it and when do we wipe it? That was explained in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? When do we wash it and when do we wipe it? We understand that from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which explained to us that it should be washed if it is revealed. If it's covered with the socks or something of that sort, then it should be wiped. Right? So this is from the Quran. From the Sunnah, there are so many hadith, so many of them that some ulama, they counted them in the 80, some other scholars, they say it's above 100 hadith. All of them, they confirm the permissibility of wiping over the socks. And this is what they say mutawatir. Mutawatir means a hadith that has come from so many different narrations that it gives the level of certainty. We know for sure that this is a certain rulings in Islam. Al-Hasan al-Basri, rahmatullahi alayhi, for example, he said 70 of the Prophet ﷺ companions, all of them told me about wiping over the socks. You know, Al-Hasan al-Basri is a tabi'i. He's one of the people who met the Sahaba but did not meet the Prophet ﷺ himself. He said, I have met 70 of the Prophet's companions. All of them mentioned to me al-masih, the wiping over the socks. So if 70 of the Sahaba have narrated this, then there's no question about it. Abdullah ibn Mubarak, he says that the people of Sunnah, Ahlul Sunnah, have become distinct from the people of Bid'ah because of this. So therefore he says, if one questions me too much about wiping over the socks, I would start to question his affiliation. Is he of the people of Sunnah or is he of the people of Bid'ah? As you will see in a little while, inshallah, there are people who, like the Shia, like the Kharijites, Al-Khawarij, they will not wipe over the socks. They will not. And subhanAllah, they got things twisted. When they take wudu, they don't wash the feet. They wipe on the feet. When they take wudu, when the feet is naked, revealed, the Shia and the Rafidah, they will actually wipe over the feet. They will not wash it. And when the feet is covered, they would say to you, you are not allowed to wipe it. So completely the other way around. And that's why this issue of al-masah al-khuffayn is an issue that is known to distinguish the people of bid'ah from the people of sunnah. And you will be surprised to know that some of the ulama of aqidah, you know, the books of aqidah and creed, they actually listed al-masah al-khuffayn, wiping over the socks, in their book of aqidah. Even though al-masah al-khuffayn is a fiqh issue, is a practical issue. But they listed it in the books of creed and belief because it is an issue that distinguishes the people of bid'ah, the people of innovation, from the people of sunnah. Al-Imam Ibn Abi al-Izz al-Hanafi, in his book Al-Aqidah al-Tahawiyya, he listed that. And he said this is the purpose for it. He listed in his book of Aqidah al-Masah al-Khuffayn. One of the most known hadith in this area is the hadith of Al-Mughira ibn Shu'bah. This hadith is very important for a number of reasons. The first reason, it is narrated in Bukhari and Muslim, which means its authenticity is not questionable. Number two is that this hadith occurred after the battlefield of Tabuk. I mean, this incident that will be reported in the hadith occurred in the battlefield of Tabuk, which occurred after the revelation of Surah Al-Ma'idah. So the Shia now, when you argue with them about the wipe over the socks, any hadith you give them, they will tell you this was abrogated by Surah Al-Ma'idah. This was abrogated by, this was overridden or wiped, cancelled out by a new revelation which came in Surah Al-Ma'idah. So this hadith in particular is an incident that occurred after Surah Al-Ma'idah. So that excuse of being abrogated is not a valid excuse. Otherwise, there are like almost over 100 hadith. All of them, they speak about al-masah al-khuffayn, but this is the one that is very important because of this reason. Al-Mughira ibn Shu'bah radiyallahu anhu, he says, كنت مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في سفر فأهويت لأنزع خفيه فقال دعهما فإني أدخلتهما طاهرتين فمسح عليهما. Al-Mughira ibn Shu'bah radiyallahu anhu, and he, like many of the Sahaba of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they used to be very keen to serve the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So whenever he's there, somebody will be holding his the container that he needs for his wudu. Somebody will be holding the shoes of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, Anas ibn Malik, another one of the companions who was known to always be accompanying the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So whenever he needed anything, there's somebody who would be happily and willingly serving the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Mughira ibn Shu'bah, this Sahabi in this hadith, was one of those companions. He said, I was with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in one of the journeys. Right? In another narration, he affirmed that this was in the battle of Tabuk, and he affirmed also that this occurred in Salatul Fajr. In the preparation for Salatul Fajr, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to take wudu, and he said, I went down to remove the socks of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to remove the socks of the Prophet so that he can take wudu and wash his feet. The Prophet ﷺ told him, leave them, meaning the feet. Leave them, for I have put them in the socks while they were in a state of Taharah. So the 2 feet were in a state of Taharah when I wore the socks. And as you will see in a little while, inshallah, this is one of the requirements for the wiping of the socks to be accepted. When you wear the socks, you will need to be in a state of Taharah, but you'll see this in a little while. So it is clear from the Quran and from the Sunnah, from the Hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and there is a consensus among the scholars, and therefore this is something that is highlighted by the ulama, and they will always recommend it, and they will say this is something that people should practice because it has become a label, something that distinguishes the people of Sunnah from the people of Bid'ah. And when you put effort into learning fiqh, sometimes you will see that the ulama, they will use as evidence to support one opinion over another, one of their evidences. They will say, doing this will make you more distinct from the people of bid'ah. So therefore, do it or don't do it. For example, Ibn Uthaymeen rahmatullahi alayh, when he was asked about the ruling of using the sabha, the tasbih, right? He said the sabha in itself, using the tasbih, everybody knows the tasbih, the beads that you use for tasbih. He says that the tasbih itself, or that tool, is not, the use of it is not an innovation. Unless the person believes in those beads or in the stones, then that's something else. But if you're using them only for the purpose of counting, then that is not bid'ah. Right? But he says, if by the use of the tasbih, you will resemble a people of bid'ah that are known in your region, and by the use of the tasbih, you will imitate them, then it's best for you not to use it, even though it's not bid'ah. You know, in certain countries, you will find that there are people, especially in the countries where you find a lot of Sufism, they will be known to have long tasbih, for example. One tasbih that has 1,000 beads, and you find some of them as well, they'll have it so long that they will actually wrap it around their neck. Right? One, it shows a purpose of showing off. But secondly, it has become a label that is known for the people of that bid'ah. So even though it is permissible for you to use this bead, the one that has 100 or the one that has 1,000, is permissible. That's the original ruling. But because it's going to make you look like the people of bid'ah, then it's best not to use it. Do you see the point here? So the ulama of Islam, in many areas of Islam, they will sometimes say it's recommended to do this, or it's recommended not to do that, just for the purpose of distinguishing oneself from the people of bid'ah. For example, as you will see inshallah when we study salat, it was reported that the Prophet ﷺ had a small prayer mat that was enough for him only to put his hand and his head on it. It's called the khamra or al-khumra, right? Which is only sufficient, small in size, just for the hands and for the face, right? Now, if one asks, what if I have one that is even smaller than that and it's only sufficient for my head? It's not going to fit my hands. What's the ruling of that? He says it's makruh. It is disliked because it will make you resemble the people of Shia, because they have a little stone that they use only for the purpose of their heads. Right? Is it originally haram to use that? No, there's no problem with it. Only because there is an innovation, the people of innovation that are known to use this particular way, then distinguishing oneself from them becomes a purpose for you. Right? Moving on from that, the ulama have highlighted that wiping over the socks is a concession, meaning a softening of the rulings. a lightening of the rulings. So the Prophet ﷺ has bent the rules a little bit for you to make things easy on you. What is the ruling? What is a Muslim's attitude concerning this kind of rulings? Right? This discussion came from the question. Now we know that wiping over the socks is permissible. Better. Is it to wipe over the socks or to wash the feet? We know that both of them are in Islam and both of them are acceptable. Like, which of the two is better? And this came with this discussion. Is washing better or is wiping better? What is more pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Right? And this is where this discussion is relevant. Now, when you understand that wiping over the socks is a concession, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bent the rules a little bit, and He said that instead of doing that, which is hard, make this that is easy. Now, it should be the attitude of the believer to accept the concessions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in the hadith, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ أَن تُؤْتَى رُخَصُهُ or رُخَصَهُ كما يكره أن تؤتى معصيته. طيب. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just as He hates for people to transgress in acts of disobedience, He also loves for people to use His concessions. So when there's a concession, it will be pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He will accept it. So it's not an appropriate thing for one to say, I can wipe over the socks, but let me go through the hardship of washing the feet. That will be more pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. According to this hadith, what is more pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's wiping over the socks. Right? Putting yourself deliberately in hardship doesn't mean that it will be more rewarding. Right? A man, or before I move to that, Imam Shawkani rahmatullah alayh, he says, in this hadith we find evidence that following the concessions is more pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and abandoning concessions is like abandoning acts of worship. Abandoning concessions is like abandoning acts of worship. Acts of worship, why do we do them? Because they please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when Allah gave you the concession, why did He do them? Because they please Him. So they are both equally. Right? So abandoning a concession is like abandoning an act of worship. Also, Al-Munawi, one of the Hanafi scholars, in his book Fayd al-Qadir, he says also in that will be evidence that the person has rebelled arrogance and pride from their hearts. You humble yourself. You are a weak individual, and because of that you need help. Arrogant people will say, no, I don't need help, I'll do it by myself. No, I don't need help, I'll do it the hard way. Right? So if you remove arrogance from your heart, you'll find yourself accepting that you are weak, and accepting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by making things easy for you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed a mercy upon you. So accept it. An arrogant person is more likely to say, no, I'll go for the hard way. He says, rahmatullah alayh, وَمَنْ أَنِفَ مَا أَبَاحَهُ الشَّرْعُ وَتَرَفَّ عَنْهُ فَسَدَ دِينُهُ فَأُمِرَ بِفِعْلِ الرُّخْصَةِ ليدفع عن نفسه تكبرها ويقتل بذلك كبرها ويقهر نفسه الأمارة بالسوء. So whoever finds himself too good or too strong to follow the concessions of Islam, eventually this will corrupt his deen, and this will allow himself to develop pride and arrogance. Another reason for why one should be eager to apply the rulings of wiping over the socks, and why it is more preferable, is because it's sadaqah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a form of charity from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh was once asked by one of the companions about a verse in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says concerning shortening the prayers. Shortening the prayers when one is traveling is also a concession. Right? He was asked that there's a verse in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, shorten the prayers when you are fearful. Right? When you are fearful. لَيْسَ عَلَيْكُمْ جُنَاحٌ أَن تَقْصُرُوا مِنَ الصَّلَاةِ إِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَن يَفْتِنَكُمُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. In Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 101. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, there is no sin upon you to shorten the prayers if you fear that your enemy will attack you. If you fear that your enemy will attack you, there's no problem with you shortening the prayers. So Umar al-Khattab was asked, now that people are not in wars anymore, we're not in the battlefield, why are people still shortening the prayers? Okay. Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, he said, I asked the Prophet ﷺ the same question. And he told me the answer of the Prophet ﷺ to this question is, he said, صَدَقَةٌ تَصَدَّقَ اللَّهُ بِهَا عَلَيْكُمْ فَاقْبَلُوا صَدَقَتَهُ. This is a charity that Allah Azza wa Jal has given to you, so accept His charity. Okay? So this is the general attitude. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you a concession, take His concessions. Right? Don't deliberately choose the hard ways. However, the ulama, they said, this doesn't mean, Ibn al-Qayyim rahmatullah alayhi in particular in his book, Zad al-Ma'ad, he says, this doesn't necessarily mean that you should deliberately wear socks for the purpose of wiping over the socks. You should not deliberately wear a socks for the purpose of wiping over the socks. No. If you need the socks and you wear it for whatever other needs that you have, then wipe over the socks when you need to take wudu. But don't deliberately wear a socks only for the purpose of applying the sunnah. Like, for example, here you come to university and it can be a little bit difficult for you to go to the wudu area all the time and wash your feet all the time. So you decide to take wudu in the morning before you leave home and wear the socks so that during the day, rather than having to wash your feet, you will wipe the feet. This is perfectly fine. But for one to say, for example, in a hot weather, right, and they deliberately wear a socks just for the purpose of applying the sunnah, then that is not really wise. So the concession of al-khuf is legislated for the purpose of making things easy on us. So do whatever is easy for you. If you happen to be with the socks on, then wipe over it. If you happen to be without the socks, then don't go out of your way to wear a socks just for the purpose of implementing the sunnah. طيب, now we're going to move on to the conditions that are required to be fulfilled for wiping over the socks to be accepted. This is the most important aspect of the discussion. The conditions required to be fulfilled for wiping over the socks to be acceptable. Now some of these, as you will see, some of these conditions are questionable and they might not be the strongest opinion, so follow up with me and heed it when I say the strongest opinion is 1, 2, 3. Yeah? Some of the ulama, or one of the conditions said by the ulama, is that the socks needs to cover the part of the body, the feet, that needs to be washed. So covering the body part that needs to be washed, or that part of the feet that needs to be washed, which means it has to cover, it has to be up to and including what? The ankle, right? So according to this condition, it has to be long enough to cover the ankle. This question is relevant to you guys, especially in the summer when there is popular socks that are quite short and below the ankle. A lot of questions come in this regard. Can we wipe over those or not? Right? So the strongest opinion, or the popular opinion in this regard, is that because wiping over the socks is a replacement, is badal, is a replacement for washing the feet. So therefore, what you wipe on has to cover that which has to be washed. What you wipe on has to cover that which has to be washed. This is the opinion that is known in the four schools of thoughts. However, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayh and Ibn Hazm rahmatullahi alayh, they said that that body part, the feet, is not a awra that needs to be covered. It's not a awra that needs to be covered. And insisting that people should have socks that are sealed and covered and proper, covering all aspects of their feet, is hardship in itself. Because most of the socks of people in the past, and even in our present day, most people have socks that has holes in them. The socks will be only intact and complete only at the beginning, but just give it a month or two, you'll see that there will be holes in it. So Ibn Hazm rahmatullahi alayh, Imam Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayh, and also it was an opinion of Ibn Uthaymeen rahmatullahi alayh, they said, one, that body part is not a awra that has to be covered. Two, the purpose of legislating the wiping over the socks is to introduce ease. If we insist that people should wear socks that are intact and complete, then we have introduced hardship. So they rejected this and they say this is not the condition. So now, this will be the opinion we will adopt in this series of classes. Okay? The socks do not have to be leather to begin with. There are many narrations in which the Prophet ﷺ was reported to have worn al-jawarib, socks made of cotton, wool, and the like. And the Sahaba, radiyallahu alayhim, 9 of them, including Ali ibn Abi Talib, radiyallahu anhu, Ammar ibn Yasir ibn Abi Awfa, and many others, they were reported to have worn socks made of wool and cotton. And Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayhi, he says, it is not possible to imagine that the Sharia will differentiate between a socks made of leather and a socks made of cotton when they are exactly the same. And the Sharia will say, this is haram and this is halal. It doesn't make sense. Right? So some scholars, they did say it has to be leather, but this is not a strong opinion. The strongest opinion that it can be of cotton. When it's made of cotton, it's called jawarib, meaning like the socks we have these days. Right? And we have authentic hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ did wipe over the socks, and many of the Sahaba radwanullah alayhim wiped over the socks. So it is permissible to wipe over socks that is made of cotton or wool or any other material that is halal and that is clean. It is possible to wipe over socks that doesn't actually cover the feet up to the ankle. That is the strongest opinion, according to Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah alayh, and according to Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahmatullah alayh. And again, I will remind you here that you need to choose an imam that you would follow when there is a difference of opinion. Right? Whenever there's a difference of opinion, you will want to say that this is the imam I'm following, and he said 1, 2, 3, so I'm going to follow that. Right? And we said that in this series of classes, we are adopting the opinions chosen by Ibn Uthaymeen rahmatullahi alayh. So he's of the opinion that covering the socks is not a requirement. So now these socks that are a little bit below the ankle, they definitely don't cover the ankle. The ruling of using them, according to this opinion, is valid and is permissible. Right? The same thing with the socks that has holes in them. The socks that are loose and not strong enough to stay on the feet, and so on and so forth. And even those that are very thin. What are the ruling about very thin socks? Sometimes in hot countries, they have socks that are so thin that they are almost transparent. Right? What's the ruling? Again, the same thing is permissible. And this will be also more relevant to the sisters when they have the kind of thin socks that they wear. It's also permissible to wipe over that. Right? As long as it can hold the name as socks, right? Then it is permissible to wear. Okay, that's the first condition. So we said the first condition that it has to be leather and it has to cover the part of the body that is usually washed. But we said that this is not the strongest opinion. The strongest opinion that it doesn't have to be made of leather and it doesn't have to be without holes or thick or anything, or it doesn't have to be also made of leather. If it's made of any material that is halal and that is permissible and that is holding onto the feet and carries the name socks, then that is permissible to wipe on. Number 2, as I said, I just alluded now, they have to be clean and made of clean material. Right? It couldn't be something that is made of the skin of a pig, for example. Right? Or they couldn't have najasa in themselves. They have to be something clean. We know the incident of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he was leading the Jama'ah, and then in the middle of the prayer, he removed his sandals. And he was, when the Sahaba asked him after the prayer, he said that Jibreel came to me and told me that there was some impurity in them. There was some najasa in them, so he had to remove them. So if that's the case, how could one wipe on a socks that has najasa in it itself? Condition number 3, that you should only use the socks to wipe on in relation to the minor state of impurity or spiritual impurity, the minor hadath. The minor hadath. You know the hadath, we split that into 2 categories. The type of spiritual impurity, hadath, that requires a wudu, that is a minor hadath, like breaking wind, like sleeping, deep sleep, like eating camel meat, as we will see inshallah in a little while, like going to the toilet. These kind of things, they break the wudu. They break the wudu. But is it a major state of hadath? It's a minor one, meaning wudu will suffice for it. But when a person, for example, has sexual relations, that is called a major hadath that requires ghusl. When a lady menstruates, and then when she's clear and she needs to clean herself, that is also called hadath akbar, a major hadath that requires ghusl. So now, the wiping over the socks, one of the conditions is for it to be used in the context of the minor hadath. So when you are required to have ghusl, you can't wipe over the socks. You have to remove the socks. There's a hadith of Safwan ibn Assal radiyallahu anhu. He says, أمرنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا كنا سفرا ألا ننزع خفافنا 3 أيام ولياليهن إلا من جنابة. So the Prophet ﷺ commanded them, according to this Sahabi, he said, the Prophet ﷺ commanded us, if we are travelers, that we should not remove our socks for 3 days and nights, except for a state of janaba, meaning when somebody has a wet dream or has had sexual relations and they need to have a ghusl, then in that case, remove the socks. But other than that, as a result of urinating, defecating, breaking winds, or sleeping, you don't need to remove the socks. You can just take wudu and wipe over it. Is this right? So we have 3 conditions now. Number 4, that you should wear them whilst you are in a state of taharah. You should wear them whilst you are in a state of taharah. State of taharah, we call it is the spiritual purity, or the state of spiritual purity, whereby a person takes wudu and he will be called tahir. Tahir means spiritually pure. Yeah, you say Bismillah, you take wudu. 2 people, both of them they have hadath, both of them broke wind. One of them takes wudu, and after the wudu we will call this person tahir. He's clean, but his cleanness, is it physical compared to the other one? No, it's spiritual. So tahara is spiritual cleaning. Otherwise, the other person who did not take wudu, he might be even cleaner than the first person in terms of hygiene, in terms of smell, etc. But as far as the spiritual purity, the person that took wudu is in a state of tahara. Right? So, condition number 4 is that before you put the socks on, you need to be in a state of spiritual purity. You need to have taken wudu before that. Or ghusl, or even ghusl. If you take ghusl, and then after that you put the socks on, then it's acceptable. Right? The evidence to this is the first hadith that we had. Right? From Al-Mughira ibn Shu'bah radiallahu anhu. He said that when the Prophet went to take wudu, he went down to remove his socks. The Prophet said, leave them, for I have put them on whilst they were in a state of tahara. So the 2 feet were in a state of tahara. Some ulama, and this is the majority of ulama, they said this tahara has to be a tahara that is based on liquid-based tahara. Pay attention to this. If somebody takes tayammum, dry ablution, if somebody went to the toilet and now they need to take wudu, they don't have water, they can use dry ablution, yes? They can use the dust. We still haven't covered this. When they use the dust to wipe over their hands and their faces, are they in a state of purity? Yes. So they can pray. They can pray. Now they are in a state of purity. Can they wear the socks on that? Huh? That's why the ulama, they say this tahara has to be water-based tahara. It cannot be dust-based tahara.
So it's number 5 or
This is number 4. So number 4, they say you have to be in a state of tahara, and this state of tahara has to be water-based tahara.
Did you say this is the strongest opinion?
Yeah. Well, this is the opinion of the majority of scholars, including the 4 schools of thought. Right? And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, leave them, for I have put them in a state of tahara. You will see in a little while when it comes to wiping over the socks. Right? We will describe how one should wipe the socks. Yes? You will see, inshallah, as we progress, inshallah, when we speak about how to wipe over the socks. You should wear the socks when you are in a state of tahara. Right? That means, the ulama, they say, if you wash the right feet, but you still haven't washed the left feet, are you in a state of tahara? No. So if you wash the feet, the right feet, and then immediately put the socks on, right? Is that acceptable? Because you are still not in a state of tahara, right? So they say to be in the safe side, because that's what he implies from this hadith. He said, I have put the socks on while I was in state of tahara. And one can never be in a state of tahara until they have finished the wudu. So some people, they have the practice of washing one feet, drying it, and then put the socks on. And then go wash the left feet, dry it, and put the socks on. Right? To be in the safe side, right? To be in the safe side, don't do that. Wait until you have washed both feet, and then dry them, and then put the socks on. Condition number 5 here, that it should be within the limited space of time. You know, there's a time restriction on how long you can wipe on the socks for. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he instructed the Sahaba radhiyallahu alayhim, they should only wipe on the socks if they were settlers, if they are not travelers, right? Muqim, if they are settlers, for 24 hours. Okay? Yawm wa layla, a day and a night, meaning 24 hours. And for a traveler, ثلاثة أيام بلياليهن, 3 days and 3 nights, which means how many hours? 72 hours. So for travelers, it's 72 hours, and for settlers, people who are residing in their own town, and not travelers, they can wipe for 24 hours. Right? So that's condition number 5. Now, from that, let's have small issues. Now, we said if you are a traveler, you can wipe for how many days? 72 hours. 3 days, 72 hours, right? Now the question is, what is a legitimate travel that allows you to use this concession? For example, here in London, sometimes you say, I'm traveling on the tube, on the underground. I'm traveling to the university. You know, I'm on my way. I travel to university using the bus. Right? So now we need to understand what is the amount of space or distance that qualifies for that distance to be called a journey to travel. Right? So now some scholars, and that's the majority of scholars, they have estimated 80 kilometers, 80 or 82 kilometers precisely. They said that 80 kilometers, according to the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ was reported to have done wiping over the socks, and he shortened the prayers, is a distance of 80 kilometers. So if you have traveled for that much, then you are a traveler. Right? Other scholars, and again this is the opinion of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah alayh, they said that in the Quran Allah never specified, right, the distance. He says وَإِن كُنْتُمْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخْرَى. If you are travelers, then make up for the fasting days some other days. So the safar, the journey, is not specified how long the journey has to be for it to qualify for the word safar. So Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah alayhi was of the opinion that safar is what is considered as a travel amongst the people themselves, in the culture, in the understanding of the masses now, what qualifies for the word travel, right? Or a journey. If people agree that a distance that is less than 200 kilometers, for example, is not a journey, then that has to be the case. If people agree that 50 kilometers is a journey, then that also has to be considered. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not specify it, so therefore we go by the linguistic meaning of the word. If we use the word to refer to a journey of 200 kilometers, then that is only journey. That is only called safar. If we use the word to refer to journeys, even starting from 50 kilometers, then that is what a travel is. Right? Now the question that comes from that is, what if there is a mixed understanding amongst people? For example, what you call a travel or a journey is different to what he calls, and different to what she calls. What do you do then? Right? Ibn Uthaymeen rahmatullah alayh, he said in this sort of circumstances, then one can resort to the first opinion, the opinion that says what? 80 kilometers. Right? So you go by that, because I think we are in this position here in the UK. People don't have an agreed upon distance as to what qualifies for the word safar, or what qualifies for the word journey. After what time can I combine the prayers or break the fast, or in this case wipe over the socks for more than 24 hours? Nothing is really agreed upon. So therefore, maybe the safest opinion here is to go by the 80 kilometers, 80 or 82 kilometers. So if your journey is more than that, then you can begin. This discussion can be relevant to people who arrive at Heathrow Airport, right? And they say, we have traveled for this much time. Now, is this a journey or is it not a journey? We are going to this airport, for example, and the journey of this to that airport is going to be less or more than 80 kilometers. So we have the distance now that can make the judgment. Other ulama, they said also, for an airport to be considered a journey, it has to be outside the city. So that also has to be considered. So we look at the borders of the city. If the airport happens to be inside of the city, it doesn't matter the distance. It will still be a settler. You can only combine and break your fast if you are going to an airport that is outside the city. Right? So the same thing applies here. If we are going to a certain airport, for example, here in London, I think City Airport is outside London.
People come from East London.
City Airport is outside London. So in that case, we need to just measure the distance and decide whether it is beyond 80 kilometers, and then decide whether we can combine the prayers, break the fast at the airport. However, because Heathrow Airport is now considered to be within the city, yeah? Heathrow Airport now is within London. It is not. London has expanded so much that Heathrow Airport is actually part of the city. It's not even too far from where we are now. Right? So Heathrow Airport is not outside the city. So when we use the 80 kilometers to measure whether a certain airport qualifies or not, you don't measure from your house to the airport. First, the airport has to be outside the city, and then you measure the distance. Yeah. So this is the first thing. For you to begin this mas'ala, you have to make sure that you are in a distance that qualifies for the 72 hours. Number 2, or rather number 3 now, we said, when do you begin counting? When do you begin counting? You have 24 hours. When do you begin counting? Do you begin counting from the moment and pay attention to this, because this is something that you will need in your everyday life. And winter is approaching now, and you will need to use this quite a bit. When do you wipe over the socks? Do you wipe over the socks from the moment you took wudu, or from the moment you put the socks on, or do you count the 24 hours from the moment you broke your wudu, or you count the 24 hours from the first time you started to wipe over the socks? Yeah? So now let's say there are three opinions, three possible opinions. One is that you would start wiping the socks from the last time you took proper wudu. Two, you would wipe over the socks from the moment you put the socks on. Number three, you start wiping over the socks from the moment you start to actually wipe over the socks. Okay? The strongest opinion is that you start to count from the moment you begin wiping over the socks. So let me give you an example now. You woke up for Salat al-Fajr, okay? And you took wudu based on water. You did not wipe over the socks. You took wudu, proper wudu. So that is the time, say 5 o'clock in the morning, that's the time you took wudu. And then you put the socks on at, say, 7 o'clock. But you still haven't wiped on it. You broke your wudu at 10 o'clock. And then you needed to wipe on the socks for dhuhr time at 1 o'clock. So you see all these times? Right? When do you now start counting that you will do your 24 hours? At 1 o'clock. So your wudu will be valid for 24 hours from 1 o'clock according to the strongest opinion. Right? Just for your knowledge, there are many scholars who said you start to count the 24 hours from the moment you break your wudu. So basically, you take wudu, you put the socks on, and then when you break your wudu, that is when you start counting your 24 hours. Let me give you an example, opinion. You wake up for Salat al-Fajr and you take wudu at 5 o'clock, right? 11 o'clock. And then you break your wudu at 10 o'clock. And then you start wiping at 1 o'clock. The strongest opinion that the 24 hours start from 1 o'clock. But a lot of scholars also have said it begins from the moment you broke your wudu at 10 o'clock. Right? I just tell you this so you can be aware that this is a valid opinion out there. But the strongest opinion that we will adopt for the purpose of these classes is that it begins from the moment you start to wipe over the socks. Now, moving on from that into issue number 4, or mas'ala number 4. Now, you are still within the 24 hours. You are still within the 24 hours. And before the 24 hour began, before the time lapsed, and you did not break your wudu, but you removed the socks. So going by the same example, you wore the socks at 10 o'clock. You did not break your wudu. You prayed dhuhr, you prayed asr. After asr, without breaking your wudu, you remove the socks. Now, are you in a state of tahara, or your tahara broke? So that's the issue now we're discussing. Right? And this is relevant to you as well, because you will need to know this if you are practicing the sunnah of going to bed whilst in a state of tahara. You know, if you sleep in a state of wudu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will appoint an angel that will sleep so close to you that he will be between you and your clothes, between your skin and your clothes, guarding you, protecting you throughout the night, and seeking Allah's forgiveness for you, making dua saying, Allahumma ghfir lahu, Allahumma arhamhu. O Allah, have mercy on them, this person, O Allah, forgive him. An angel will be saying this throughout the night. For one good deed that you've done, what is it? Wudu. Taking wudu. You took wudu and you stepped like that. Right? But a lot of people, they will find it difficult to sleep with their socks on. You will need to remove your socks. Right? Some people can sleep, but many people, they find it very uncomfortable. So you would remove the socks. Now, are you in a state of wudu when you remove the socks or not? because you remove the socks without breaking your wudu, and you are still within the 24 hours. So now this mas'ala is very relevant. So one opinion among the scholars, and again I want you to get used to opinions. That will just expand your knowledge and will make you more used to Islamic knowledge. One opinion, the ulama, they say it breaks the wudu immediately. That's one opinion. Because you wiped over the socks. And that socks is gone, is removed. So what you wiped on is no longer with you. So they say that wudu is collapsed. Other ulama, they said, no, it doesn't collapse, but you need to go and wash your feet. Only your feet. Right? Because when you took the socks off, the wudu or the taharah of the feet has collapsed, and you need to go and just wash them so they can be in a state of taharah. As you can guess, both of these opinions are invalid. The strongest opinion is that the wudu is still valid. The wudu is valid, so when you go to bed, in the example I gave you, and you decide to take off your socks, right? But you have taken wudu just before that, your wudu is valid. A lot of people, they will find it very difficult to take wudu before they go to bed, because they're thinking about the feet. Washing the feet is a problematic thing, because you know, putting your feet on the sink, and you know, it involves more action. Whereas washing the face and the arm is just a lot easier. That people are happy to do that. If they know that they can just simply wipe over the socks, you don't actually have to wash the feet, and then after that you can just remove the socks, and you'll still be in a state of wudu. I think a lot of people will be happy to take wudu. So the strongest opinion is that yes, it is possible to do that. You can wipe over the socks, remove it, and go to bed, and the wudu is valid. The basis for this is that this person's tahara, this person's state of purity, is taken based on evidence. Meaning, who told this person is their wudu is valid? The Prophet ﷺ and the Sharia through the evidence, right? So now, who has the right to tell you that your wudu is invalid? Only something from the Sharia. And there is no evidence from the Sharia to say that one of the nullifiers of wudu is removing the socks. Right? So in the absence of that, no one has the right to tell you that your wudu is invalid. So you remain in the original state. And they also use reasoning. They said, for example, if a person takes wudu, and then they have a haircut. They have a haircut. So the hair in which they wiped on is no longer with them. So what happened then? Do they tell them the wudu is invalid? They can't do that. The same thing with a person that has to have their hands amputated or their legs amputated, you know, and they have taken wudu. No one can tell them go and take wudu again. Right? The wudu is valid. And the same thing, the same mas'ala applies to after the end of the 24 hours. Right? So you can use the socks and wipe for 24 hours, beginning from the moment you wiped. 15 minutes before the 24-hour finish, you decide to take wudu and you wipe over the socks. But then after that, you can no longer wipe over the socks. Right? Now you have to remove the socks. Whenever you need to take wudu, you have to remove the socks and wash the feet. But what happens to the wudu you took just half an hour before the end of the 24 hours? Is it valid or is it not valid? Yeah? According to the same analysis that we just did now, it's valid. Do we have any evidence to suggest that the end of the 24 hours is the end of the state of Taharah? No. So you remain in the state of Taharah as well. And that's very, very helpful as well. Now, we move on to that from here to how should one wipe over the socks, and I think I pretty much covered this. Some ulama, with regards to how one should wipe the socks, they say if you just cover a little bit of the feet, that will suffice. That's one opinion. Another opinion is the total opposite. They said, no, you have to wipe the entire socks from top and bottom, the whole thing. And you might have seen people do that. They hold the feet and they wipe from the top and the bottom. Okay? But this is also invalid because Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh was quoted to have said in an authentic hadith, he said, لو كان الدين بالرأي لكان أسفل الخف أولى بالمسح من ظاهره أو أعلى من أعلاه. If deen was based on logic, if our deen and our sharia was based on our logic, the logic of a human being, then wiping over the socks would have been more deserving to be at the bottom than it is at the top. Why? Meaning, he's saying that why do we wipe only on the top? When we do the walking, how do we walk? We walk on the bottom part. So which one deserves to be wiped more? The bottom or the top? The bottom, according to our logic, the bottom. So Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh, he says people should not always refer to their logic, because there are other things that are taken into consideration in our ibadah other than what we can comprehend with our senses and our logic. So always base your actions on the text. So Islam takes into consideration other things other than what you cannot understand. And this, subhanAllah, a lot of people, you find them, when it comes to certain rulings, they say, oh, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So they reject, you tell them this Islamic ruling or that Islamic ruling, that doesn't make sense, this doesn't add up. You tell them it's not about sense, it's not about logic, especially for people who have they have not developed their senses and their Islamic knowledge so they can have a valid sense of logic. Some people are just beginners in learning their deen, and you find them, they're so, subhanAllah, they're so, they have this courage or audacity, I should say, to complain or to reject certain rulings based on their logic. So Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, he said, don't use your logic when it comes to the deen. Go by the text. So he said, I have seen the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he wiped over the socks, he would wipe on top of the socks, not at the bottom. Right? So now we understand from this that you should not wipe the bottom part of the socks, and you cannot wipe a little bit of the upper side of the socks, because you cannot wipe a little bit of it and then say that I have wiped over the socks. Do you see the logic here? You cannot say I have wiped over the socks when you only wiped a little bit of the socks. You should either wipe the whole of the socks or the greater portion of it, the majority of it. If you wipe the majority of the socks, you can, loosely speaking, you can say I have wiped over the socks. So when you do wipe, you begin from the toes, moving towards the beginning of your leg, at the ankle, at the beginning of the leg, and that's where you should stop. So wipe from the socks, from the beginning of the toes, all the way to the beginning of the leg or the shin, and that will suffice, inshallah. I think this suffices here, inshallah. We have about 5 minutes. If somebody has any questions, you can answer them. Yes,
Do you wipe both feet at the same time or just one?
the sunnah, the brother is asking, do you wipe on both of them at the same time, or do you wipe one at a time? If you wipe one at a time, is acceptable, but the sunnah is to wipe, what we hear from the hadith, is that you should wipe them all together at the same time. When it comes to, that's the sunnah, that's the preferred way. Right? But if one wipes each one separately, it's still acceptable. Yes.
Assume within the 24 hours.
Uh-huh.
What if your socks start to smell? Does that affect your wudu?
No, if the socks start to smell, just out of hygiene, maybe you would want to remove it or change it. But as far as the wudu is concerned, whether it's valid or not, the wudu is valid.
Can't change that.
Huh? You can if you want to change it, but the wudu itself is valid.
And then if you change it, you have to do wudu again.
If you remove the socks, okay, this is a good question. What happens if you, in the middle of the 24 hours, your wudu is valid, but the socks, the last time you took wudu, you wipe over the socks, right? And then you remove the socks. That's a very important mas'ala. You remove the socks. Now you are still in a state of Taharah. You remove these socks because it starts to smell. Right? What if you decide to wear another socks on top of that? You change the socks. Now you are in a state of Taharah, right? But is it valid for you to wear the socks? Because the last time you did it, did you wash the feet? The last time you took wudu? Huh?
No.
You did not wash the feet. What you did, you wiped. So in that case, you will have to take wudu again and wash the feet. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And that also leads us to also remind you to be careful not to, sometimes people end up scratching their feet and they end up removing, when you scratch your feet inside the socks, depending on where you scratch it, sometimes you end up removing half of the socks, So in that case, you have almost removed the socks, depending on how much of it you do. So if you have removed the socks, then that scenario will be true or applicable to you. The scenario of removing the socks when the last time you took wudu, you base it on wiping over the socks. In that case, what will happen? You have to do wudu again. So be careful. If you are wearing a socks in which you plan to wipe over, be careful how much you go when you end up scratching. Right? Or if you can scratch on top, do that. If you have to go in, just make sure that you don't actually reveal the feet. Right? Because revealing the feet constitutes the removal of the socks. And if you remove the socks, you cannot wear it again without a valid wudu. A wudu that is based on water-based tahara. Is this point clear? I'm happy to go over it again. Anybody confused about this point?
Does that apply for before you sleep, you make the wudu and you don't want to put your socks on because some people are wearing their socks. Does that apply for the same situation?
Yes. Yeah, we said if you are wearing your socks all day long and now it's about the time you're going to go to sleep, you brush your teeth, you take wudu, and you wipe over the socks, and you want to remove the socks, your wudu is valid. Your wudu is valid, and you can sleep like that, alhamdulillah, and you get the reward. It's fine.
Now, what if the last time you had to wipe over your socks and you took them off? Does that apply for the same situation?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. If you took wudu, let's say for example, 10 o'clock and you're sleeping at 11 o'clock, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And you removed your socks, but you haven't broken your wudu.
What if you did break your wudu?
If you did break your wudu, then your wudu is invalid and you take another wudu. The whole idea is to go to bed whilst in a state of wudu. Yes, sister.
Do you know what you said, remove the socks? Does it mean like, for example, if you've got long socks and like it rolls down all the way to your ankles, you said,
If you have a long socks,
yeah, it
Uh-huh.
goes up to your knees,
yeah,
and then like if you sleep or something, it goes up to your ankles and it rolls down this way.
the part that the ulama they say, even those who have made, remember we said that the strongest opinion that it doesn't have to cover the feet. It doesn't have to be the kind of socks that covers the feet, as long as you don't remove the socks.
If it's still,
Go on.
it's still covering the feet then.
Huh? It's still covering, then the wudu is valid. Or you can still wipe on it. You're saying, if you took wudu and then you slept on that wudu, right? And the socks is still on, but the long socks that you were wearing rolled down while you were sleeping, and you woke up for Fajr with the socks rolling down, that's fine. You can wake up for Fajr and still wipe over the socks. As long as you have not removed the socks, and as long as the 24 hours has not lapsed.
So it's only fully removed.
Huh? Yeah. What really matters if it's fully removed, if you take it off your feet. Yeah? Yes.
What about socks? Do they, if I have socks that don't cover, like, they're just up to just like half my ankles, is that still okay?
Yes, we said this at the beginning. Some ulama, they said it is not okay. Right? But we said the strongest opinion that we will adopt for this class is that the socks, the valid socks, do not have to cover the feet up to the ankles, up to and including that. That's not a condition.
Yeah.
Right?
And holes, you said.
Huh?
If there's a hole.
Even if it has holes.
Okay.
Right? Yes.
I know it comes about the material it's made from the side, so it doesn't have to be leather. But like, could you wipe over shoes? Or
Yes, that's a valid question. Shoes are two types. There are those shoes that are boots, meaning they cover the ankle. So we can wipe over those ones, no problem. There are those that are shoes that go just under the ankle. Right? So according to the strongest opinion, we can wipe over those ones. Right? So if I take a step back, let's forget about the shoes for now. Let's say you took wudu you took wudu, and then you put the socks on. When you are about to leave home, you thought that this is a very cold day, let me have another socks on. Now, on which of the two should you wipe? Huh? In either of them, because you haven't broken the wudu. Because you took wudu like a water-based wudu, and then you put one socks on. You did not break your wudu. Half an hour later, before you left the door, you decide to put another socks on. You are still in wudu, a water-based wudu. So wiping on either of the two socks is acceptable. But if you took wudu and then you wore one socks and then broke your wudu, right? And then you took wudu again and you wiped over that socks and then you put a second one, right? Now in that case, you have to wipe where? On the first one. On the first one. Because you broke your wudu in the middle. You broke your wudu in the middle. Right? Let me say it one more time, because I'm going to get this understanding into the shoes. The shoes is going to be the second socks in our example. But before we move on to the shoes, let's talk about two socks. You took wudu, and then you put the socks on. And then before leaving home, you decide to put another socks without breaking the wudu. Now this is just as good as you wearing two socks at the same time. Not a problem at all, because you did not break your wudu. But if you took wudu, you put the socks on, you break your wudu in the middle, take another wudu, and then put the second socks on. Then from that point, when you wipe, you cannot wipe on the second one. You can wipe on the first one. Right? So the same thing with the shoes. If you assume that the shoes is the second socks, you take wudu, and this might be helpful for you, especially those of you who decide to pray on their shoes on, and when they go to the bathrooms, they don't want to take wudu, they don't want to remove their shoes, right? So what you do, you take wudu, and you put your socks on, and you put your feet, your shoes on. Now the shoes is your actual socks now. So when you leave home, you know that shoes can be wiped on. Are you following?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you go to university or work or whatever, you can wipe over that socks. Right? But what happened over the shoes? What happened when you remove the shoes? Because you took wudu on the shoes, or you wiped over the socks, but then you removed it, entering the masjid. What happened then? Is the wudu valid? Please don't say no. I'll leave you and run away. Removing the shoes or the socks that you wiped on do not break the wudu. Yeah? So that's very helpful. Knowing that you have left home with the shoes on, and when you came to the toilet here, you don't have to remove your shoes. You can take wudu, wipe over the shoes, and then go to the prayer room, knowing that your wudu is valid, pray dhuhr. In a little while after that, you pray asr, without needing to go through the hardship of putting the socks on or going to the toilet or whatever. It's easier that way. Do you understand what I just said now? Anybody need me to repeat it? Is it clear? Yes.
Just you said.
But before, let me just add something very important here. If you are going to be an imam at some setting, you should be conscious that some people may not be as educated, as Islamically educated as you. And because of that, some people might not respond very well to you wiping over the socks. Some people, they insist that wiping over the socks has to be a leather-based socks. Has to be khuf. And if you know that you just wiped your socks on, they will not be too happy to follow you in the imamah. Right? So just be conscious of that. Either educate them, or do not just wipe in front of them. And the strongest opinion, even if you are of that school of thought that believes that you have to wipe, you can only wipe on a leather-based socks, you are allowed to follow an imam that has wiped over the socks. You don't have to leave them. But not many people are aware of this, you know. So you have to be just mindful to that little detail, inshallah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, because initially we said before, if you have socks and you wipe over the socks, but then you take the socks off, you still have your wudu, but next time you have to wash the feet, right?
Yes,
because you took off the socks.
If you broke the wudu,
Yeah, if you broke wudu.
if you broke the wudu.
Now the question is, if we're using the shoes
Uh-huh.
as second sock,
Uh-huh.
does the same thing apply?
Yes. If you have removed the shoes, now as I said, when you went to the prayer room, you have to remove your shoes. Now, when you take wudu, you cannot wipe over the socks. You have to remove the socks and take proper wudu, because the socks on which you wipe has already been removed, which is the shoes. Like, let me repeat that one more time, because it's a very important issue, and it's very helpful. You know, you take wudu in the morning after Fajr, or for Fajr prayer. You put socks on, and then you put your shoes on. And now, when you leave home and you need to take wudu, you know that you can wipe over the shoes, right? You wipe over the shoes, you go to the prayer room for dhuhr, and then when you remove your shoes, now because you removed it, you can no longer put it back on and wipe on it. But that wudu is still valid. The removal of the socks or the removal of the shoes itself does not break the wudu. So you can remove the socks, you can remove the shoes, and remove the socks as well. And so you can be still in a state of Taharah, and you can pray dhuhr, you can pray asr with it. And when it comes later, when you go home, or anyone you have a proper opportunity to take wudu, then you have to wash the feet. Does that make sense? Yes.
Sorry, just going back to the same point. If you wipe over the socks, you can't wipe over the shoes, because you said if you're wearing two socks, you wipe over the first socks, you can't wipe over the second socks.
I said,
If you didn't break the wudu.
if you did not break your wudu
Yeah.
in between, then you can wipe on either the shoes or the socks.
But if you break your wudu,
If you break your wudu in between,
Yeah.
if you put your socks on and then break wudu and then you start wiping over the socks, so the wiping happened on the socks now.
Yeah.
Now you cannot add another socks, or you cannot add the shoes and start to wipe over the shoes, because the initial wiping happened on what? On the socks. In that case, you have to stick to that. Yeah. Okay, I think we'll stop here, inshallah. You have contact detail. If you want to drop me a message or a question, please feel free to do so.
Quick
Yes.
question. See, regarding the shoes, you said at the beginning before explaining, you said if you're wearing like boots and that covers your ankles, you can wipe over them. Can you explain that further, please?
We spoke about two types of shoes. We said there's a type of shoes that are above the ankles. We call them boots. And we have the type of shoes that are below the ankle. So basically they don't cover the ankles. Right? According to the difference of opinion, we said, some ulama, they say, for the socks or the shoes, it has to cover the ankle. Right? According to that opinion, only boots you can wipe on. But we said the strongest opinion is it doesn't have to cover the ankles. So now the shoes that are less than the ankle, that are also acceptable to wipe on. Yeah? Okay. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. صلاة المغرب. Okay, sisters, we're going to pray.